29. Remaining hidden in the patches of scrub outside the main gate of the Usagumo enclave, the 4 Dest members and the Tatate watched the mechs blast out of the bastion and stalk northward along the river. Knight, Holland, Horg, Miranda, and Topi huddled as low as they could. The plan was to enter the enclave at dawn, if possible, and they had moved from the Dest position and across the open ground as fast as they dared. But they hadn't been quick enough. By the time they reached the outskirts of the enclave, activity had begun at the gate and on the walls, forcing them to wait until traffic around the entrance became heavy enough for their entrance to pass unnoticed. They decided to make their move just before noon, but a flurry of activity in the bastion housing the mechs had driven them to cover again. Now, as the mechs leaped out of their fortification, the team had their chance. The sudden explosion of the Panther and Javelin's jump jets had scattered the stray pedestrians. In the confusion, Knight gave the word, and the 5 rose from their positions and joined the confused throng crowding toward the main gate. The guards, who usually checked the identification of all who passed through, were huddled in their gatehouse, peering through the vision slits at the settling dust. They waved the crowd of panicked people through the gate, the Dest group getting past them without earning so much as a glance. The guards would become officious later, making up in arrogance their lack of attention earlier, but not now. Toby got the 4 humans off the main street and into the back alleys as quickly as possible. Miranda was still in the mundane clothing he had worn during his sojourn in Usagumo, and Knight and his section were dressed in the clothes they'd worn among Amatukaze. Now, they realized, the dress of the 3 enclaves was so strikingly different that they were immediately recognizable as outsiders. They scurried into an alley and huddled behind some crates. They didn't have to wait long. A pair of civilian humans wearing the loose jackets and trousers favored by the lower class of Usagumo approached. As the pair passed the team's hiding place, Miranda stepped out in front of them and raised his hand. The 2 men stopped, beginning to utter protests at this unwarranted intrusion on their lives. What was this civilian doing trying to stop them? They never got a satisfactory answer. Their necks were broken before they hit the street, and their clothes were off a moment later. The job finished, Knight and Horg were already dressed in attire appropriate to the enclave before they noticed a small group of Tatate children staring at them in open-eyed wonder. Then the little bird-like creatures fled before any explanation could be given. The team moved on, directed by Topi toward their goal. The little alien trotted ahead, chirping to any of his kind that she encountered along the way. She nodded and bobbed as she went, sometimes stopping for more lengthy conversations with the adults. But it was from the children that she seemed to get most of her information. The adults occasionally made scolding sounds as the humans approached, snapping their beaks in the direction of the team. The children crowded around at a respectful distance, their eyes bulging wider than usual. Topi directed the team through the streets, heading directly toward the highest point in the enclave. She finally stopped where an alley so narrow that they had to squeeze through sideways debouched onto a broad square. She hunkered down and gestured to Knight, indicating a room on the 2nd floor. She rattled off some words that the section leader didn't understand, but the little alien was quite insistent. Knight made walking signs with his fingers, and she nodded. When he indicated that she should accompany the group, she shook her head violently. She would not enter the building. Topi stood to her full height and let the Dest members crawl between her legs until they were all in front of her. She spoke to Horg, the last in the line of 4, as he passed, and made some guttural sound. It sounded like a benison, and Horg took it as such. Knight indicated that Horg was to stay outside and guard their escape route. Then they were ready to move inside. Knight went first, stepping into the early afternoon sunlight that flooded the square. The building directly in front of them was an imposing structure of stone and gold, The edifice was apparently intended to dazzle and humble all who approached, but Knight was too interested in deciphering its internal structure to be impressed. The broad double doors probably gave access to a central staircase that led to the second floor, he thought. That floor probably had a central corridor that ran the length of the building, with doors leading off to rooms on either side. Up the stairs and then down the hall toward the windows Topi had indicated. He made a mental map of the building just by looking at the exterior. The others were doing the same, coming to the same conclusions. Training and experience made a difference. They plunged through the darkness of the entrance. The stairway was ahead in the light that poured through a broad window halfway up and above a landing. The stairs doubled back on themselves to reach the second floor. They started up, climbing slowly as though they belonged there. They made the turn, 2 going up each side. The transverse corridor was what they expected. They turned left, Miranda hanging back to cover the rear of the other 3. The right hall was empty, but the one they chose had a uniformed guard. He raised his hand to stop them, but before he could utter a word, Knight challenged him.
"We're here for the prisoner. And why are you not at the door to her cell? You should be there, and not wandering the hall. Go there at once, or I will report you to your superior."
The guard stood open-mouthed at the challenge. It took him a moment to recover, to remember that he was at his assigned post, to recognize that the language used by the stranger was just as strange as his garb. He opened his mouth to speak, but it was too late. The thrust took him square in the throat, crushing his larynx. He tried to speak, tried to gasp, but there was nothing. He reached for the pistol in the holster on his right side, but he felt a hand grasp his wrist. He struggled. Then a red mist covered his eyes. Knight lowered the guard to the floor and lifted the heavy pistol from its holster. He motioned Miranda to stand guard while the others went down the corridor in swift strides. They came to the door of the suspected room. Knight put his ear to the solid wooden door to listen, but he heard no clue as to who or what was beyond the portal. He motioned Holland to stand to one side of the door while he took the other. They brought their short-barreled laser rifles out from under their cloaks. He then nodded to Andy Holland. She crept forward to try the knob. The solid gold heavy and rich under her fingers. She twisted it gently until it came against the stops. The door was locked. She stepped back and leveled her rifle at the lock plate below the knob. Knight tapped her on the shoulder and bent to whisper.
"Not the laser. The gold will only absorb and dissipate the heat, fusing the lock. Use the slug pistol."
"But the noise," whispered Holland.
"Everyone will hear it." "Can't be helped. We'll have to move fast."
She nodded, shifted the rifle to her left hand, and took the heavy pistol from Knight. Poetic justice that she used the guard's pistol to smash the lock. The rapport of the weapon was loud in the confines of the corridor. The golden lock plate, knob, and innards of the mechanism exploded under the hammering impact. The door swung inward. Andy Holland was through the door before it reached its stops. She rolled to the right, ending her move in a crouch. Sunlight cascaded through the windows beyond, momentarily blinding her. Then she saw the table and the pinioned figure. She cleared the room with a quick glance. No use being surprised by someone else. Clear. She sprang to the table. The figure of Ariaki Sine lay motionless. Holland bent over the body, listened for the sound of breathing while she felt Sine's throat for a pulse. A yes to both. Sine was still alive. She slashed at the bonds with her vibro dagger, the straps giving almost no resistance. Behind her she heard the high-pitched whine of a laser rifle and Knight yelling,
"Faster, Andy! We've got company!"
There was motion beside her, and then Johann Miranda was there, sweeping the prostrate figure off the table and into his arms. He turned toward the door. Holland jumped in front of him and led the way into the corridor. Knight was waiting, a laser rifle in each hand. Holland saw the blast deflectors glow red as Knight fired both weapons from the hip. She had a momentary vision, probably from some old vidisplay she'd seen as a youth, of hatted gunfighters moving down a street, weapons in their hands, firing them from the hip. Then the vision was swept aside by reality. As he moved down the hall, Miranda fired into the darkened corridor, the laser hit splashing golden minnows of slag from the walls. His shots were unhurried, first at one side, then the other, a machine doing its job. She trotted after him. Behind her she could hear the heavy steps of Knight. Miranda stopped shooting and led the way down the stairs, 2 at a time. Then they cleared the landing, with the others pounding along behind. Somewhere in the building a klaxon sprang to life, its shrill blasts echoing through the halls. From somewhere above came the sound of doors slamming. They didn't stop, didn't look back. Knight fired up the stairs without taking aim. At the foot of the stairs, Holland saw silhouettes to the right. She sprayed laser shots at them and saw figures fall away from the mob. Then there was a flash of light and a roar. Something hummed past her head to rattle off the wall behind her. A cloud of acrid, pungent smoke that stank of decay swept over her. She kept going. The square was blindingly bright. Holland paused, letting her eyes adjust. The others crowded behind her. Civilians were scattering across the bright stonework. There were other, uniformed types who stood their ground. A sharp sound made Holland turn to her right. A lump of lead glanced off the stone pillar and howled away. Then a horrible, shattering, screeching roar drew the attention of the party to the broad central street that led from the square. Rattling into the plaza came a strange machine, all lumps and knobs and exhaust stacks. The copper-bound wheels screeched pathetically as it turned toward the building. Guards scattered from in front of it, others ran toward it cheering. Emblazoned on the front slope in green and gold was a symbol of Usagumo. The monstrosity shuddered to a halt in front of the group. Holland raised her laser rifle and let the crosshairs center on a vision slit. The top of the hatch popped open, and the head of Topi emerged. The little Tatate bobbed out, waving her arms toward them. From somewhere to the rear came another roar and the howl of a ricochet. Topi ducked and looked back. She waved her arms more enthusiastically.
"Let's go!"
shouted Knight as he vaulted into the vehicle.
"We can't run from this mob, but we can use this. Let's go!"
The team was no sooner on the vehicle, not yet within its protective confines, before it shuddered into reverse. Holland heard shouts of terror and disbelief as the guards scattered away from the flailing wheels. Then the vehicle was moving forward, rumbling toward the main street and the gate beyond. It picked up speed going downslope, roaring past the gate guards as they raised their hands in protest. Then they were out on the main road, still careening along, the vehicle lurching and banging as it went. Horg sat in the driver's seat, cursing at the unresponsive controls like one possessed. Inside the dark interior, the little team held on to whatever they could find that was not burning hot. Cradled among them was the unconscious form of Ariaki Sane.